A Place Called Perfect, Chapter 24. The Persuasion. "Not you two again," William Archer sighed as he opened his door a crack, spilling light onto the dark street. "Please, Mr. Archer, can we come in?" Violet asked. "I have something I need to tell you." "Violet, I told you this morning I'm not interested in helping you. Now please leave me a—" "It's about macula." William's face changed. He glanced down the street in both directions and quickly ushered them inside. Closing the door, he paused against the wood, then turned to face them. "What do you know about macula?" he asked, his tone firm. "This better be good, children, because you have worn my patience thin." Violet looked at Boy, then pulled the book from under her jumper. "I found this," she said, handing it over. "I've marked the page." William took it from her hands, walked to the table and sat down. His body slackened as he looked at the picture. Unconsciously he thumbed the paper. "You looked beautiful that day," he whispered. Violet walked over to the table and sat down too. Boy followed her lead. "I found it in the orphanage," she said. "Was perfect once called adequate?" William nodded. "When did it change?" Boy asked. "It had been happening for a while, but the big change was when my brothers created No Man's Land, about 12 years ago." William sighed, lifting his head from the page for the first time. "You see, Adequate was a lovely town. It had its good points and bad points, but on the whole it was a happy place. Balanced." "So what happened to it?" "My brothers, of course," William replied, his fist clenched over the open page. "They were always too big for their boots. They were perfect in school and perfect at home, but they didn't get the praise they thought they deserved from their peers and teachers. Or from our mother. On the other hand, I wasn't perfect. I was a bit of a joker. I had loads of friends and I was our mother's pet. It wasn't that she didn't love the twins. She did, but for some reason she protected me fiercely. Maybe she was protecting me from them. I never really asked her. Either way, it sparked a vicious jealousy in my brothers." "Because you were her favourite?" Violet asked. William nodded. "I wasn't perfect, but I was popular. That killed the twins. They couldn't understand how I could constantly fail in school, break all the rules, and still be popular. They got straight A's, never acted up, and were the picture of perfection, yet people didn't really like them, and no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't turn Mam against me. It ate away at them. This was all bubbling under the surface, and then one day, macula arrived in our town." "She's beautiful," Violet said, looking at the picture. "She turned up like an exotic bird. Her dad was building the estate, your ghost estate." He nodded at Boy. "She wasn't meant to stay long, but he died tragically, as I told you, and she'd nowhere to go. Mam took her in, and we fell for her immediately. All of us did. In fact, every young man in Adequate was in love with Macula Lashes. My brothers tried everything possible to win her heart. George sent her flowers, Edward wrote her poems, but nothing worked. I did nothing. I was too shy and never thought she'd like me. The strange thing was, nothing seemed to work." "That's women for you," William smiled at Boy, who blushed. "We fell in love, and, added to everything else, it broke my brothers. At least that's how it seemed at the time," he continued. "From that moment on, they plotted to get rid of me and anything else that didn't fit with their vision of a perfect world." "So they developed the tea," Violet said. "Well, it was the drops in my time, before the tea." "So they made people go blind, and because they were blind, they went to the archers, who fitted them with glasses and stole their imaginations in order to control them. Just because they wanted their way, wanted things perfect. They made everyone suffer. That's psycho." Boy spat angrily. "I couldn't have put it better myself," William sighed. "That's how Adequate came to be perfect. Little by little they changed our town. My brothers got what they wanted. They became powerful and perfect. popular even, and those who didn't conform were imprisoned in no man's land, under the threat of the Watchers. We're only a stone's throw from family and friends who go about their lives oblivious to the fact that we even exist. That's the cruelest bit. If they locked us up somewhere else, far away, it might be easier, but I think my brothers like it this way. They always had a cruel streak." "That's awful," Violet whispered. "How could anyone want people to suffer like that?" William shook his head. "When I was caught taking the glasses into Perfect, they locked me up alone for a few years. I wasn't allowed outside. Even the limited freedoms of no man's land were denied to me. They took my life away." His voice trembled as he continued. "They let me out once they thought they'd broken me enough to make me toe the line. So that's what I do now. At least when I was locked up I could pretend that I would take some sort of action when I got out. But now, well, I just accept my lot like everyone else in here, and I hide myself inside this workshop. It's strange. That life, in whatever form it takes, goes on outside these walls, while everyone in no man's land just exists. I just exist." William stood up and walked over to a cabinet by the wall. "This is her," he said, pulling a black and white portrait picture from the drawer and joining them back at the table. "She really is beautiful," Violet added. "Was beautiful," William sighed, his voice barely audible. "She left Perfect. Met another man, George told me. They were both killed on honeymoon when their hot air balloon crashed." "Oh!" Violet laughed. William looked up from the picture. "Do you think that's funny?" he snapped. "No, just George's story. I didn't know he had an imagination. I thought he only kept them in jars." "Violet, are you sure?" Boy hissed across the table. "I really don't know about this." "About what?" William said, glaring at Violet. "Well," Violet continued, "I don't think Macula was in a hot air balloon or with another man." "What do you mean?" William said, pushing back from the table. "I met Macula," Violet smiled. "I met her last night in the ghost estate." William looked at Violet, his face turning deathly pale. Slowly he put down the portrait, then without a word he strode into the shadows and through the door to his office. "I knew we shouldn't have come, Violet," Boy whispered, leaning across the table. "Let's go, please. I don't think he's too happy with us." She was about to answer when a door banged and William Archer emerged back through the shadows. He stopped short of the table and flung something down onto the wood. A gold ring wobbled and rolled before falling over dead. "Her wedding ring, taken from her finger after she died," he snapped. "Now please leave this house. I have lost all but a morsel of my patience." Violet picked up the delicate gold ring and stared at the inscription inside. "To my love, everything is clear when I'm with you, William." "But," she said. Her hesitation hung in the air. Boy got up from his seat and grabbed her hand. "Come on, we have to go. I'm sorry, Mr. Archer, we didn't mean—" "Her eyes," Violet said suddenly. "Her eyes are green, really green like grass." William Archer walked to the door, grabbed the handle and wrenched it open. "And she wore a locket," Violet stammered as Boy pulled her through the doorway. "It was gold with green stones. She held it almost all the time I was there." The door slammed behind them and Violet and Boy were left alone on Wickham Terrace. "It was her, Boy, I swear it was," Violet sobbed as they reached the corner. Suddenly another bang shook the street. The pair turned to see William Archer standing outside his house, his features hidden by the night. "Tell me that again, Violet," he shouted. She looked at Boy, who pushed her forward towards William. "Tell him," he whispered. She had green eyes." "After that?" "Her locket. She wore a gold locket." "You'd better come back in," William said, disappearing through his front door. Violet looked at Boy, who shrugged, and together they walked back up the street. William Archer was sitting in his chair by the window. The pair took their spots at the table, and for a while there was silence. William swirled the gold wedding ring around his little finger. "You said she held the locket all the time you were there." He looked up at Violet. "Yes," Violet nodded. "She rubbed it constantly. I noticed because it was beautiful." William's eyes glassed over and he dropped his head into his hands. Violet glanced at Boy, who looked as shocked as she felt. She was about to say something, but when her friend shook his head, she stopped. After a few moments, William continued. "I gave it to her. Emeralds for love and hope. We'd been separated a lot, you see, and we were arguing a bit. The separations were my fault. I'd been trying to rally support against my brothers and was hardly ever home. It was a crazy crusade," Macula said, "and one day she disagreed with me. None of us really knew what was going on. We knew people were going blind, and I had suspicions my brothers had something to do with it, but that was all. Sometimes I think Macula thought I was going mad. In a way, she was right. It did consume me. The locket was a peace offering. I gave it to her on our wedding anniversary, New Year's Eve, 12 years ago. My brothers captured me early the following year, and I never saw Macula again. Our anniversary was the last time we laughed together." William choked back his tears. "I'm sorry," Boy said. "Well, we shouldn't have come." "No, Boy. I'm the one who is sorry. It's just I haven't spoken about Macula in a very long time, but I think of her every day. As soon as you mentioned the locket, Violet, I knew you really had met her." William looked up from his shaking hands. "How is she?" he asked. "She's okay," Violet replied. "She helped me. She saved me from the Watchers. I asked her if she wanted to escape, but she said she had nothing left. I think she was scared." "And she held the locket all the time?" Violet nodded. "Maybe she thinks of me too," William smiled shyly. "Did she seem well? Healthy?" "Yes, she seemed healthy," Violet said, "but I don't think she was happy." William stood up from the table and paced the room. The sadness left his face. His mouth narrowed and his eyes darted from side to side. He was thinking hard. "They told me she was dead," he said angrily, colour rising in his cheeks. He marched towards the table, his hand held firm in a white-knuckled fist. He slammed it ferociously into the solid wood. Everything jumped, including Violet and Boy. "My brothers," William snarled. "They have made their last pair of spectacles." He walked to the cabinet and put out a notepad and pencil. "Now, tell me everything you know. I need all the details," he said, rejoining the pair at the table. Violet smiled at Boy, then up at William. "I told Boy all we had to do was make you brave again." And that's the end of chapter 24.